Previously on the Film Fan Club show.
The best movie of the year, and what is a lot, sure to, if the Academy has any sense to it, they will give the Oscar for Best Picture to Annette.
Probably won't be nominated for anything, which is a sad thing, but that's what the Oscars
I'm saying it right now. I have faith. Annette will win Best Picture. Hear me now, quote me later.
The Academy Awards came out last month, and Annette, otherwise known as the best movie of last year, was nowhere to be found. I am personally investigating multiple reports of ballots for West Side Story being dumped at the Academy headquarters overnight. We've got to stop the steal.
To whom it may concern, there has been a mistake. Annette, 140 minutes, was clearly 2021's best picture. I am respectfully asking that we stop counting the ballots for this year's Oscars until we can ensure a fair election. The integrity of the Academy has never been more important. Stop the steal. Respectfully, Sam.
I'd like to thank Lenny Schwartz, Ian Simmons, Brendan Gallagher.
This is the FBI. We have a warrant for Sam Carrico.
Off.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Is that thing on?
What?
That camera, is it on? I mean, I've got a show to do and I'm up against a deadline now.
Listen, here. Don't worry about the camera. If you understand your rights, why don't you tell me about the night of March 27th?
Okay. Hey there, welcome to the Film Fan Club show. I'm Sam Carrico.
Please, just tell me about March 27th.
I'm getting there. I think I know why you're happy. The Oscars are finally behind us. Yeah, congratulations to the Best Picture winner, Coda.
It's no Annette, but I thought it was a cute movie. It's a coming-of-age tale about a young girl and a deaf family. It was kind of the underdog going into the Oscars. Everyone thought Power of the Dog was going to win, but they didn't realize that dog was neutered.
Apple Studios, too. Apple Studios was behind Coda, and this was the first nomination and first win for Apple. I mean, Steve Jobs, rest his soul, he would be proud. I mean, say what you want about Apple Studios, but it's gotta make you feel good to work for that company, you know? Those Taiwanese children building the iPhones should feel good. Other than that, the Oscars were pretty boring this year, right? I'm kidding, we witnessed an assault.
I know it's been talked to death, but we've got to address the slap. Will Smith slapped Chris Rock because of a joke about Jada's hair. He went on to win Best Actor and gave the most uncomfortable speech I've ever seen. In the following days, he's resigned from the Academy, and then they banned him from any Academy events for 10 years.
Now, I bet that hits hard, you know? It's gotta feel like a real slap in the face. Perhaps even rock bottom, you know? I just hope that he has the will to power through.
Boo.
In his defense, it was just one little fight, but his mom got scared. No, they asked Jada, his wife, they asked her about it later on, and she was pretty candid. She said, I don't know what got into Will. You know, he's usually really happy around this time of year. It's springtime. He only ever really gets upset around the month of August. No, I kid. It's a personal matter, though. It should stay between them. It should stay in the marriage, you know, between Will and Jada and whoever Jada's currently entangled with.
Other stuff has happened since the Oscars, though.
I saw the movie X. Have you seen this one?
X, yeah. It's about young people who rent a house out on an older couple's property so they can shoot a porno there.
I know, but before they can finish the movie, there's a killer on the loose, taking them down one by one. Yeah, I really appreciated this movie for what it was, though. It starts off kind of hot, honestly, but then, I don't know, it kind of gets gross as it goes on, and by the time the movie's over, you're just sitting there doing some self-reflection. Kind of like watching a porno.
I also saw the movie Morbius.
It was terrible.
But even worse were the vampire puns in the subsequent articles about the movie. Morbius sinks its teeth into the box office. Morbius drives a stake into the box office. Morbius is a vampire movie that really sucks.
I've got one for you. These puns are making me want to bleed out. Okay, we've got a great show.
Alright, this is going nowhere. Let's go. You're going to a cell.
Wait. I get a phone call, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Why?
Can it be over Zoom?
Okay, joining me now, he is a video editor based in Texas. Alex McKellar is here. Hey, Alex.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great because today we're talking about Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, the new A24 movie. What did you think of this movie walking out of the theaters?
Oh, man. I
I mean, not to try to overhype it, but I absolutely loved this movie. Sort of like the first thought was like, I can't believe I had an emotional reaction to two rocks sitting in silence. That's what you get with this kind of crazy movie. Like it's going to take you to some weird places, but then even the weirdest of those places, they're going to make you feel things. And it was, I mean, it was incredible. I can't recommend it highly enough. I loved it.
I completely agree. I thought this movie was, I don't want to overhype it like you said, but I'm trying to think of all the movies that I've seen so far this year. But I think of the ones that I've seen so far this year, this is my favorite. Michelle Yeoh, her performance in this, she plays this mom who has this, relationship with her daughter that's kind of on the rocks. Her husband, they're kind of going through issues as well. And then also they're kind of Jamie Lee Curtis has this role as an accountant at the IRS because they're dealing with all these tax issues. So it's a good way of kind of blending these like larger than life multiverse issues with the everyday issues. So
yeah, very mundane.
Right. Going off of that, and what you kind of talked about and hinted at was this mix of like a really like emotional approach and like some like really funny stuff happening. Do you think that this tone is going to work for everybody?
I mean, I certainly hope so. Like the first time I saw it, I went and saw it with my parents. Like we love watching movies, and I think I had seen the trailer I don't know how long ago, so I'd been hyped for this movie for a while just because it finally looked like something like weird and different. And I will say they were more on the side of, well, that was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen, than me being like, that was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. They both enjoyed it, but so without getting into spoilers, some of the props used in the fight scenes, I think, moved it into too far into the weird, for some of their liking.
Like as far as it's like about audience taste, but I think you and I are the type of person that like the jokes in this movie, it works.
And, oh yeah. Fantastic.
I go back and forth though, because like I don't go back and forth. It worked for me, like the blending of the emotional stuff with the humorous stuff. But
right.
On paper, it just seems like it shouldn't work. Either the funny should take away from the emotion, or the emotion should take away from the funny. You can't have it both in this movie. But it's able to hit those high highs as well as those low lows. Really well. And like you said, it's hard to get into it without spoilers, so we'll get into spoilers here in a second. But I want to talk about this cast for a second. I already talked about Michelle Yeoh, how you were telling me about how this is one of her first big projects in a while, I think Western projects ever.
Yeah, I think her first leading role, I mean, I could be wrong, I didn't look into it, but I think it's her first like lead, like where she's the lead of the movie in like at least Western cinema. There may have been something else that I missed, but I mean, she's an incredible talent, and it's surprising, that we've all had to wait this long to see her just, I mean, not only like her physical capabilities, obviously we've seen that for years, but like her dramatic capabilities, her emotional beats, and even her physical comedy. Like it was like she was crushing all of those departments in this movie. It was just an excellent showcase.
And then her interaction with the Ki Kwan, who plays her husband, Stephanie Hsu, you're talking about, who plays her daughter, who has a very large role in this movie.
Yeah.
What did you make of the dynamics between between the relationships between the actors?
I like that core of the three family members, I think, was just rock solid. You get little moments of each and the dynamics going on between them all very quickly in the beginning. That's all very well set up, and still sort of the frenetic energy that you're going to get, it's going to get turned up to 11 later in the movie. The opening sequence is just sort of the chaos of the mundanity of their life running this, struggling laundromat business. You get the sense that, the mom and daughter, their relationship is on the rocks. The stakes already feel pretty high for them in just sort of the mundane, everyday, relatable stakes. And then very quickly it gets turned up to like, oh, not only do you have to do your taxes, but you also have to save the infinite multiverses from chaos. So, have fun.
Which again, this just shouldn't work. So it's a great testimony to the script and to the direction that they're able to make this all work.
I keep thinking about Ki Kwan's performance. He just was incredible. You get to see him in like 3 to 4 different versions of himself, and each one feels distinct and different. And he crushes it.
That's what's so really
glad
hard.
He's back.
Yeah, that's what's really hard. Yeah, him and Michelle Yeoh, and Stephanie Hsu as well, to an extent. To an extent.
They all play different versions of themselves, and that's just so it's not like you have to make yourself believable as one character. You have to make yourself believable as multiple versions of that one character, which is just from an acting perspective, that's just really hard to do, and from a screenwriting perspective, it's really hard to do, and they do it all so well. This is the writer-director team, a writer-director duo behind Swiss Army Man. So I didn't know that going into this, but if I would have known that going into this, I guess I already went and saw it the first day I could, or the first weekend that I could. So I mean, but I just, man, that tracks perfectly knowing that, because if the audience has seen Swiss Army Man and they're on the fence about seeing this, hopefully that convinces them, because this is just that movie. Should we do spoilers?
Yeah, we can get into spoilers.
Okay, the one thing that would be a little bit detracting from this film, and if I was going to have a little bit of, but this is just my fault.
That's okay.
There's a lot to understand in this movie. What's the bagel? Is that the bagel is like the
everything bagel?
Yeah, the everything everywhere all the time bagel is the thing that corrupts her daughter, who is the villain of this movie.
Well, I mean, yes, it's like, honestly, I love the bagel, because it's like the daughter gets corrupted by the fact. So I guess real quick to, as we're getting into spoilers, some of the mechanics, if you haven't seen it and you don't care about spoilers, to understand what we're talking about, basically in a certain universe, Michelle Yeoh's character figures out how to verse jump, essentially, which is like sending your consciousness to connecting to another version of yourself to like acquire their abilities and or see their universe. Like that's sort of how this multiverse works, is your mind can switch and you can get the experiences from there. And so in that universe, her daughter, still played by Stephanie Hsu, still called Joy, basically goes too far, and instead of that like killing her, she's now connected to all of her consciousnesses across the multiverse simultaneously. And in being able to see everything everywhere all at once, she falls into this trap of nihilism. Right, exactly. Like all of it works so well together.
Well, I love that, because that's and that's why this movie works so well, is because that's also like a meta thing, or like because so many people nowadays, I hate to sound like a grandpa, so many people nowadays are nihilistic,
all these kids nowadays,
with their nihilism.
This movie, what I loved about it was it addresses it head on. I mean, not to like dive too deep into my own personal stuff, you're not my therapist, but like I've had those moments where, like they address it in the movie where it's like we get some new piece of information that makes us feel like even smaller pieces of shit. Right. And you'll hear about that, in the sort of existential nightmare that is our world right now, with all the different things going on environmentally, politically, socially. Like there is times where you're just like, you're like, well, everything is crazy and out of control, so why not say that none of it matters, and therefore I don't have to feel anything, I can just turn off. So that's, in the movie, the daughter does that by putting everything on a bagel, the everything bagel, hoping that it'll collapse everything in on itself, and therefore we'll just destroy everything, so I ain't got to feel like shit anymore, because everything is pointless. And then in that, she, like, you find out throughout the movie that she's actually searching for someone else to see this and get consumed with her and maybe see it from a different perspective. But she's also looking for her mom the whole time. That's sort of the family element brought into the metaverse element. So I mean, for me, it definitely took some like sitting with, and I'm glad I've seen it twice to sort of make some of these more nuanced connections, because it's a roller coaster. Like it's a fever dream almost, how fast things are coming at you. So I don't fault anyone for being like kind of like, all right, that was awesome, but like what exactly was going on? Because even for me, I'm like, there's parts of it that I'm like, I want to go through again.
So she builds the everything bagel, which is made up of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the exact line, but she talks about, she's like, I put everything on it, like my hopes, my dreams, my fears, all of the breeds of dogs, all of the personal ads on Craigslist, salt, poppy, or whatever and the everything sauce, or sprinkles, whatever it is. It's like, because there's the classic everything bagel, and so she puts all of it on there. And at first you find out that like she's using this as like basically her nihilism personified in a seemingly meaningless object that just has everything in the name. But then it does become similar to a black hole, just all encompassing, sucking everything in, all of the joy. All of the joy is being sucked in, and her
Yeah.
name is Joy. See, there's another thing I just realized right now. The
And the-
movie's great.
And the bagels are obviously a metaphor for how the
Right.
daughter's been feeling this whole time, because like you said, she's a lesbian, and or at least bisexual. She has a girlfriend, and
Right.
her mom has not quite accepted it yet. And so that gets tied into the third act of the film in a large way, because it's all about metaphors. So how does I love that metaphor, but of course it's a little bit confusing how they tie in what, like Michelle Yeoh telling her dad about her daughter being gay, like that solves it somehow or something, right?
Well, that was like,
or is that just a character arc conclusion?
I would say that's like step one, because what I like about that is that after Michelle Yeoh tells her dad, after Evelyn tells, her dad, Evelyn is her name in the movie, Joy runs out of, the laundromat and is like, I'm happy that you're figuring your shit out. I'm happy that you're having this moment, but like, it still hurts. You and I are still hurting each other. So just let me go. And she does for a minute. And then Michelle Yeoh steps up again. And she's like, no, listen, like you hurt me too. Like, you don't call enough. You got a tattoo. I don't like that. I am uncomfortable with some of this, but, and everything's bullshit. But even in that, I would still rather be here with you than not be with you. So it's like the step of addressing and like confronting to the grandfather that like, yes, my daughter is dating a girl, I know that's there's a lot of cultural baggage thrown on top of it. This is very much also about generational trauma and sort of the expectations going down and how that affects people. I was watching some interview with the Daniels, and Daniel Kwan was talking about how they've been working on this movie for like 6 years, a few years writing the script and rewriting it, and then being an indie film, the process of casting and scheduling with these, big actors and actresses. And then the pandemic happened sort of right at the beginning of their post-production. I think they were talking, they had like a couple shots left when everything was getting shut down for the pandemic. But then being a small indie thing, that just made the post-production balloon a whole bunch, which is why, we're getting it now as opposed to not earlier.
That makes sense.
But he was talking about, he's like, yeah, when I started the script, I was writing very much from Joy's perspective. I was single, still like making smaller projects. And then by the time, we were releasing it, he's like, I'm married, I have a house, and I have, a child. So it's like, now I'm watching it and like editing it more from Evelyn's perspective. So I think it's kind of nice that like, it sort of reflects even his life change. And like, we're not just sympathetic to Joy's position as this, young girl struggling with all of this generational trauma and in a messed up world where it's like, it's impossible to have your shit together, but everyone seems to expect you to have your shit together. And we're empathetic with her, obviously, but we're also empathetic with Michelle Yeoh's character about being like, well, yeah, I've clearly put a bunch of this shit on you because my life's a mess. And, then I'm expecting you to somehow be better. But also, you've thrown shit at me. So it's like they both need to have that moment of realization and like coming together of like, we're both imperfect, but we'd still rather be together as a family. Even if this isn't the universe where I'm a movie star or ultra successful, like I want to be in this universe.
That got to me, man. Yeah, the part where like you could see how they're materially more successful but not together, and then even in that universe they're like, oh damn, I wish we could have made it work, because I would have liked doing taxes with you,
laundering taxes with you. I know.
I'm like, fuck, man. And this is funny,
man.
The emotional stuff is just like really the highlight of the movie. I mean, it's badass. I love the multiverse stuff, and I think a lot of people that go see this movie will get a kick out of that because it's awesome for that reason.
Yeah,
but
and just like, use of practical effects in the multiverse stuff.
Yes,
it's gorgeous.
There was a good setup and payoff too, because I think they said like there was a joke, they made a Ratatouille joke, and then she's like, what, with the raccoon? She's like, no, it's not a raccoon, and the guy just said it's a raccoon. He's like, yeah, it's a raccoon. And then later we go to a Ratatouille universe. Ratatouille. And like you talk about practical effects, it was a little puppet. And that was good. It was even that was tied into the like one of the emotional montages. There was like them trying to save the raccoon. One of the emotional
Another thing that I was introduced as a joke was the hot dog finger universe.
Right? Yeah.
That's silly. That's a funny joke. We're not going to come back to it. Then we come back to it a couple times, and that's the universe where she falls in love with Jamie Lee Curtis. And talk about range for everybody. Jamie Lee Curtis' character gets to like go on a whole love story arc in one of these universes. So it's just like stellar.
Primarily without dialogue too. Like it's like there's bits of dialogue in there, but like you're getting most of those beats through just the visuals.
We talk about the comedy, the things they have to do to access the ability to take like skills from different versions of themselves. They have to do something like statistically like weird. So it's just weird shit basically. So you have like the comedy we're talking about, that we have people shoving things up their bodies and stuff, and it's how is this funny, like so funny in a serious movie, or how is this serious movie so funny?
It's incredible.
On paper it shouldn't work in this movie, but it does. All the beats work really well. So you just have a lot of fun with that, and then you also have a lot of fun with them accessing the special abilities, like you were alluding to, the pizza shield and everything.
Right.
I love just getting to see like what's next.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I also, on the second viewing, I was noticing this more, just how well the movie like primes you with information that you find out more about later. Like, so you see Waymond, when he switches to do kung fu for the first time, he like pulls out this chapstick very, methodically and unwinds it all, and you're like, what is he doing? Like, and then he eats it, and you're like, what? And then he's picking gum off the bottom of the table, and then also like they foreshadow the bagel with like they set up and they're eating bagels. You see all these little things. I was also noticing in the trailer, like there's a shot where Michelle Yeoh is just staring at gray clothes in a laundry cycle, that looks like the bagel, and she's just sort of lost looking at it. And I'm just like, man, like you have all of this visual language, and to borrow from Red Letter Media, like you may not have noticed it, but your brain did. So you are, you're like well primed for these things to then, and then following along with Michelle Yeoh when she's reading the instructions that Alpha Waymond gave her, it's like one step at a time, like switch your shoes, imagine this. So like you're learning along with her, which and they do it in such a good way without needing to be too expository. Like this, like everything's so complicated. There is a good amount of just expository dialogue. That's all I would say, delivered well, with the fact that it's Alpha Waymond coming to this other person that has no idea and trying to get her along. But it's also visually explained really well. Like it's a very good balance of that classic, show, don't tell. So like I said, like it's, I mean, honestly, like I'm still in the, recency biased post movie high, obviously, but like, yeah, I mean, I will be surprised if there's another movie this year that I enjoy this much. I mean, it is long, but it doesn't feel long. It never drug for me. And it is like this is for me one of those movies that's like, this is why we love movies, just because of all the different things they pull into it and show what they can do. Like we're talking about practical effects, or I made a joke at the beginning about how, I had an emotional reaction to two rocks sitting in silence, because it was it was incredible. It's a real testament to what we can do with like this art form.
Yeah, the two things, they make the most out of the multiverse thing for sure. Yeah, animated
absolutely.
Universes, rock universes, hot dog universes, but also
Pinata universes.
Right, but also like you're talking about the originality of like for 2 hours 20 minutes, you don't need to be, it doesn't need to be part 17 of an interconnected universe for you to go, get invested in characters that you just met, so that's what I love. I love the fact that I can go in knowing nothing about it, be blown away by it, and then have a whole everything, this whole universe to talk about.
Yeah, you can have everything everywhere all at once. I heard one of the Daniels mention that it's like, this is almost like, I mean, not completely, because they were working on this before I think the controversy came out around Scorsese, but like, Scorsese saying, Marvel, like all that stuff. And they jokingly were like, they're like, well, why not both? Why not have a big blockbuster action thing that has the heart and the sentimentality of an indie piece? So like, that's kind of what this is. Like, it's got big blockbuster stars, blockbuster action, incredible practical effects, but it doesn't lose that commitment to being sentimental and being like, no, we're not gonna undercut our emotional beats with a joke. You know, we're not going to have this big bombastic moment. Like the one, I love Guardians too, but my big problem with that is like they have the big Guardians moment there, and then Mantis gets hit in the face by something to like undercut that so you can laugh, you know. And it's like all of that works. I love that movie. I love James Gunn, but it's like this movie, it like you sit in those nihilistic moments with Michelle Yeoh, like it brings you down into these depths to like bring that climb back up, be all that more meaningful, you know. And then they don't, even when they're being comedic and like I would say the sentimental, you know, empathy fight towards the end, it's not undercutting, like the jokes aren't undercutting the emotional empathy or like the excitement that's going on. They're like elevating it in a way. So it's like this is what you can do. You don't have to be scared of being sentimental in these movies. Like, I mean, I was along for it, and I feel like we'd all be along for it. You know, you can have the comedy and the sincerity without the comedy undercutting that sincerity. There's ways to make them work together.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is a great point. Just to echo what you're saying. Yeah, like I think like that's a great point about the Marvel movies. Is like you can be funny, you can be serious, you can do all these things at once, you know, in the movie. In one movie, you know, no pun intended, with everything all at once.
Yeah.
But like this movie did it well, but it just knew when to place that different stuff. You didn't have to place a joke right after a serious scene. You could let the serious scene be serious, let the jokey scene be jokey, and you know it worked out really well. Alex McKellar, thank you so much for joining the show.
Always a pleasure. You know, hope to see you in a different setting next time. But you know, we're rooting for you.
Okay, joining me now, my friend, recovering photojournalist John Lein. Hey, John.
Hey, Sam. How you doing? I see you're locked up.
You know, we'll get to that. But I'm a little bit excited. Not as excited. You really got the short end of the stick, man. I was telling Alex because he and I just talked about Everything Everywhere All at Once. Spectacular movie.
I really want to see it. I haven't yet.
Original storyline based on no IP that's existing. A24 got a good track record there. Amazing film. You and I get to talk about the Fantastic Beasts movies.
It'll be a pleasure.
These movies are, I don't know how to describe them. I said to you that this franchise is running on fumes because it seems like J.K. Rowling is just kind of throwing everything. Like each movie in this franchise is her like, okay, maybe this one will work. And then every time it's like, no, not really. And I saw the third one. You saw the second one because I saw the first one, reviewed it for this channel, did not see the second one. And I'm like, there's no way that I'm going to sit through two of these movies. And you were like, there's no way I'm going to sit through two of these movies. So you took the pleasure of watching the second one. I saw the third one. And while I was watching the third one, I was like, at this point in the Harry Potter franchise, we had a moving storyline here. And I feel like at this point in the Fantastic Beasts franchise, it's their third attempt at getting it started, you know? So yeah, let's start with broad thoughts. I'd like to start with you first, since you did see the second one. Broad thoughts on the second one, and then we'll just go from there.
There were bits that I guess I kind of enjoyed, but most of it kind of felt like things were just happening because of stuff that we didn't know was in place. Like it's hard to explain really, because something about the movie feels like it's structured out of order to me. It feels like the scenes are built wrong. Like maybe they're supposed to be for a mystery thriller, but then it's a fantasy adventure movie, right?
Yeah, so like, is it literal? Does it just seem like they're out of order, or is that like a style they're going for, like a Batman Begins kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it feels intentional. An example, right? In the second one, there is a relationship between Dumbledore and Grindelwald that in their youth, they swore an oath not to ever attack each other.
Yeah, that gets followed up on. It seems like they took a note from that, because you mentioned that before I saw this third movie. You mentioned that was a problem for you, and they explained that they went into it a lot in this third movie. So it seems like they may have took a note of that. Go ahead, though.
Okay, I mean, so the key development of that relationship within the second movie is that their blood oath creates a little pendant thing called, I think, a blood pike. And it makes it impossible for them to attack each other. So they're trying to work through agents to hurt each other, kind of, without actually doing it themselves. But you don't find out what the blood pike is until the last scene of the second movie. But for the whole movie, there are close-up shots of Grindelwald wearing it. In the opening action scene, they make a point of having characters be very intent on getting that pendant for whatever reason.
So they don't explain the pendant is throughout the film, the second film, but they don't explain what it is until the end of it. And
unless they explained it in the first one.
They did not, because Dumbledore was not in the first one.
Right.
So this movie, when I say that this series is just literally throwing everything at the... First of all, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is what they would call Tinder if they had it in like the 1600s. What I mean, though, whenever I say that this franchise is just throwing things at the wall and seeing whatever sticks, like at the very beginning of this franchise, what didn't even seem like it was interested in really getting into Dumbledore or any of that stuff. Grindelwald was introduced at the very end. It was about losing these like animals and having to like find them throughout like London or something, or no, New York in the 1920s. It had nothing to do with, now there's like a blood oath, and like we're learning about the secret long lost children of like Dumbledore's brother. I'm like, oh, throw it all out there. Just like, okay, like just look at the title. If you look at the posters, you see the Fantastic Beasts part of the logo gets like smaller as like time goes on. You look at the poster for this third one, it's like basically just like Harry Potter stuff, you know, like it's got the what's it called, Hogwarts. It's got the Hogwarts on the poster. What does that have to do with the storyline? So let's get into spoilers. Can you take us through the storyline of the second movie and your thoughts as you go?
Yeah, okay, so it opens with Grindelwald in prison after the end of the first movie. He's being extradited to Britain so that he can pay for his crimes in Europe, even though they could have just kept him in prison or killed him or anything, whatever. It turns out that the American people in charge of transferring him to the British are actually in league with him now, and so they attack the prison transport and he frees himself. He fills the flying horse drawn carriage with water, and then there's a fight in the carriage underwater as it's flying, in which the pendant is floating around and everybody's trying to grab the little silver pendant, and I have no idea what it is at this point. And then months later, apparently, the British Ministry of Magic calls Newt into their office to be like, hey, we'll let you travel abroad again as long as you kill Credence for us and become a British Aurora.
They put a hit out on Credence?
Yeah. The British Ministry of Magic tries to hire Newt Scamander to assassinate Credence.
He's a zoologist.
Yeah, right.
What?
He loves animals and is like superpowered specifically because he takes care of living things. And they're like, hey, you want to kill a kid for us?
So obviously he says no, right? He doesn't have the heart for that.
He says no, and they immediately go, oh, well, good thing we brought up backup bad guy cop, and we'll send him to do it. And then Dumbledore asks Newt to go do the same mission, but except instead of killing Credence, Dumbledore wants Newt to like find Credence's relatives so that Credence's relatives can replace the smoke monster aspect of Credence. No context. So Newt is like, no, Dumbledore, I don't want to do that. And he just goes back to his animals in his magical zoo place, whatever it's called. But then his American friends, one of them whom had their mind erased in the end of the first movie, come to his house.
Dan Fogler, his friend from Balls of Fury.
Yes. Is his name Dan in real life, or is that his character name?
That's the actor's name is Dan Fogler. He was in the hit film Balls of Fury, I think with Christopher Walken, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Christopher Walken was in Balls of Fury with him. What's his name in the movie? Eddie?
I don't know. I haven't seen Balls of Fury. It's been
not in Balls of Fury.
I literally saw Fantastic Beasts 3 just like less than an hour ago, and I have no idea what his name is. Dan Fogler.
Anyway, his muggle friend who had his mind erased at the end of the first movie shows up and is just like, it didn't work. It only erased bad memories, and even though some of my memories were scary, I wouldn't have called them bad. And so the couple of memories that I did lose, the mind reader woman, whose name I also can't, Queenie.
Queenie, I remember she's a big part of the third movie.
Yeah, I figured she would be given the end of the second.
So, like, does that only affect them, the only good memories thing, or does that like affect everybody else that got their mind erased at the end of the first movie?
No idea. I assume that if it didn't affect everybody in the way that they wanted it to, they wouldn't continue to do it, right?
That's quite the big leak. Well, yeah, right. You're right. It's got to work. Otherwise, yeah, they wouldn't continue to do it. But if it doesn't work, that's a huge leak.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But, you know, the Ministry of Magic is garbage. So
we'll get to their electoral system. The third movie has a lot to do with their electoral system. And
does it go into it?
Grindelwald runs for office. It's so dumb. Go ahead, though. We'll get there.
Because I was wondering, like, are they a representative democracy?
Apparently.
Are they like a landed gentry, kind of like the best magicians?
They have like a magic NATO, basically, or a magic UN, and each country has its own like president or basically or whatever. And I shit you not, because Grindelwald is Hitler, they have him run for president of the Ministry of Magic from Germany or some shit. I swear. I swear to God.
There's a magical freak show and circus and creature zoo, I guess. Everybody breaks out of it because Credence and a woman who turns into a snake sometimes and eventually at one point will be unable to turn back into a human.
Right a second. Right. Can we unpack that for a second? I love J.K. Rowling's attempts to be inclusive. It's like, no. We'll have you know, like the one Jewish person at Hogwarts was named like Goldstein or something like that. We'll have the Asian, we'll have an Asian member of the cast turn into a snake. I just feel like it's a misguided attempt at J.K. Rowling being like, oh, be inclusive, and then they like give Nagini like the most tragic and disturbing backstory whenever it could have just been a snake. So what is she portrayed as, like a sympathetic character or like a villain?
Oh yeah,
or?
She and Credence are the only characters I was rooting for the whole movie.
So how is that? How do you square that circle? We're supposed to cheer for her in the very last Harry Potter movie, her slaughter?
I mean, I never watched the Harry Potter movies past the third one, and I didn't read the books past the fifth one. So I only knew
Yeah, so you know that do you know that like a big part of the last movie is the snake tries to kill Hermione, and then one of the Weasleys, I think, comes and like slices it up, and it's like, yay, the last one, and she's the last Horcrux, and that's how Voldemort dies, because Nagini gets fucking killed. And it's like in this movie, it's like, oh, she's actually kind of sad though.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I guess it retroactively makes that part of the Harry Potter movie into a tragedy.
It's just weird. It's just tone deaf is all I feel like.
So in the second movie, she's a prisoner to this traveling freak show where the guy running the circus thing is abusive and exploitative of weird monsters and people. And Credence frees her from that because he seems to care about her, and then leaves her to join Grindelwald because he wants to know who he is at the end of the movie. Because everybody keeps being like, oh no, the thing you thought you were, you're not that. And then he gets pissed off at being told 4 separate times that he's not who he thought he was. It's so weird. And then I guess to turn her into a snake and a Horcrux that gets killed at the end of your other book series is just weird. But everything has to be a thing. The Phoenix has to be a thing, right? The mirror that Harry Potter looks into to see that which he most wants has to be a thing.
Oh yeah, that's in the second movie, isn't it?
Yeah. Dumbledore looks into it to relive a moment where he holds hands with Grindelwald and makes a blood oath and pants really heavily, and then the blood pike is formed. Newt has a bunch of superpowers that you think would just be picked up by everybody in the wizarding world, but I guess not. The Nifflers can make golden holograms of past events. so that you can figure out what happened at a crime scene and then follow a target.
Are they the little platypus things?
Yeah, the little
okay.
gold hunting moles.
Those are kind of cute, though. I
like them.
Yeah, they're fine.
So much stuff happens. Lita Lestrange, she is engaged to Newt's brother, but she has a history of being picked on because there were rumors when she was in school that she killed her brother. Everybody thinks Credence is her long-lost brother, but actually Credence is Albus Dumbledore's presumed dead brother. Lita Lestrange's brother died in the sinking of the Titanic because right before the Titanic sank, Lita Lestrange switched her brother with Albus Dumbledore's brother because her brother cried all the time.
What
and
the
she
fuck?
didn't. I mean, there's other stuff mixed in there. You know, her dad likes the son more than he cares about her, and so she's kind of like emotionally conflicted and wants to get rid of the child that is
but it's like thrown in on top of that. It's like, and
he's like, oh, he was just crying all the time and I wanted him to stop. And so I switched babies with a baby that wasn't crying, and it just happened to be immediately before the Titanic hit an iceberg.
The Titanic is such like a J.K. Rowling thought she was so fucking smart when she wrote that.
Everything has to be a thing.
Yeah. Is she a tragic? Is that like we feel bad for her, or is that like because there's a little bit of that in the third movie, like a thing is explained as part of the character's backstory. I'm like, you did what? And you're a good guy?
They put a lot of work into like rationalizing why she did that, like, and all the stuff that she did as a child. I was like, oh yeah, I'm 100%, you know, that's not really a big deal. You switched babies.
You didn't know what was gonna happen.
You didn't know the Titanic was gonna sink.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And you were also a child.
Just really bad luck, you know.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. But then at the end of the second movie, she goes with Grindelwald to join his like.
Is she alive at the end of the second movie?
Yeah.
Zoe Kravitz's character. She's nowhere to be found in the third movie. That's funny.
She's not in the third movie at all.
At all. The Lestrange character, Zoe Kravitz. No, incumbent Catwoman. No, she's not.
What happens with Newt's brother in the third movie? The whole arc going into the end of the second movie for those two characters is that his fiance, who might have said that she loved Newt at the end of the second movie, but was looking at both of them standing next to each other.
There's like a love triangle or something. Yeah. That's not there. Newt has no love interest in the third movie, and neither does his brother.
What about Tina?
She's not in the third movie. She's absent from like 90% of the third movie. She's at the end as a cameo appearance. There's one time where she sees that something that Newt is doing on the news, and she's like, I know him, you know, and it's like, oh, that's her from the other movie. I know her. It's strange. I know for a fact that actress doesn't have better things to do, because she was in Alien Covenant, great movie, but it's not getting any sequels. You know what I'm saying?
Just because you don't have better things to do than Fantastic Beasts 3 doesn't mean you want to do Fantastic Beasts 3, Sam.
That's a good point. Maybe I not acting, not working would be probably better than.
Grindelwald calls a rally of his supporters, and it's like, and then the magic cops bust in to disperse the rally, but then Grindelwald goads one of his supporters into trying to kill one of the magic cops, and the magic cop kills the supporter, and then Grindelwald is like, go everyone, and tell the world that it's the cops that are violent, not me, the leader of the fascist movement that wants to enslave and or kill all non-magical humans. Grindelwald is just like, I don't want to subjugate humans forever. I am a fighter for freedom and love, and I just think that magicians need to take the reins of human society to stop them from doing the atom bomb and the Holocaust.
I've had this scene described to me as like Grindelwald vapes World War II, basically.
Yes, he smokes smoke out of a skull hookah and then blows the smoke out and it makes the little like portrait vision thing. It's wild.
And everybody's just like, yeah, that checks out.
Right, and they're all like, okay, well, I guess to stop the Muggles from nuking everyone, we should do our own Holocaust against non-magical people.
Which just raises the question, could the wizards have stopped Hitler? And did they choose not to? It's like, you never have to think about these things with Harry Potter because it's just fun magic school. But then whenever J.K. Rowling is like, all right, now they're in 1920s, 1930s, there's like a structure, they're in historical events, you know, I'm like, you can't do that and have me not raise these questions. Are they assholes by choosing to allow the Holocaust to happen?
I guess they had to let the Holocaust happen because the only way to stop the Holocaust was to do a worse one to all of humanity.
Right, that's Grindelwald's solution, yeah.
Right, his solution is, oh, we can't let the Muggles kill each other, so we have to kill all the Muggles.
So would you recommend The Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald?
Absolutely not. There's a scene where a guy takes Newt at prisoner and locks him in a sewer and then is getting ready to leave, but then has a headache and passes out. And Tina is like, oh, he's dead because of a curse where he wasn't supposed to tell us what he was doing, or else he'd die because he's in service to Grindelwald. You've killed him. And then Newt is like, no, and just pulls a tentacle monster out of his eye because apparently Asian water demons lay eggs in sewers that get into people's eyes that form little tentacle monsters that make them pass out. It's fine to have a magical world, right? But the best magical worlds also have some sort of rule or structure regarding how the magic works. But in the opening fight scene of Crimes of Grindelwald, Grindelwald just like turns the horse's reins into snakes that bite a guy and then throw him off of the flying wagon. I don't know how anything works. I think that Johnny Depp was probably one of the better parts of this movie. I mean, it's most of the movie is not very well constructed, but at least there were scenes where Johnny Depp was intimidating and an interesting villain. The climax of the second movie revolves around Grindelwald convincing a bunch of characters who are important to our protagonists to leave the protagonists who they care about and join Grindelwald in a plot to subjugate all of non-magical kind.
Right. It's that X-Men First Class moment when Mystique leaves Xavier, kind of.
Yeah, but all of those things, like in X-Men First Class, it's kind of like motivated by stuff that has been established.
Right, it's a better film. Yeah, I agree.
Oh man, yeah, it is. Fantastic Beasts, man. Just what a mess Fantastic Beasts is.
So in the third movie, it starts by firmly establishing that Gellert and Dumbledore were lovers. I liked that because I didn't like how in the second movie, I didn't see it obviously, but I heard they played coy a little bit like that. They said that they're like more than brothers or something.
A cop says, I heard you and Grindelwald were like brothers. And Dumbledore says, more than brothers. And then when he looks into the mirror thing that shows everybody's deepest desires, it's him doing the hand-holding blood oath thing.
Oh, so that's that's kind of clearly gay, right?
It's one of those things that's like, you know, it's acknowledging that the character is gay without having two men kiss or
say
physically intimate, because, you know, we want our characters to be gay, but
we gotta market this to China.
Right.
So they don't do anything to explain why Gellert's appearance has changed. Not only does Mads Mikkelsen look nothing like Johnny Depp, they don't give him the same look as Johnny Depp. You know, like it's just Mads Mikkelsen with the comb over, and he's just wearing a suit. You know, he doesn't have like Johnny Depp looked like he was dressed like a vampire or something he was playing. So it's just funny. I like the more subdued take on Gellert, but there's a scene that's like clearly before current events, and it's back when they were still on speaking terms, and they have him say, why would you follow me, you know, to this point if you're just going to leave me, you know? And then Dumbledore says, because I was in love with you. And I'm like, oh, okay, you know, that's confirmed Dumbledore's gay. That's kind of, look at you, JK. At this point, the first scene in the movie, when I realized that this is just a weaker version of Xavier and Magneto, I'm sorry, but it is. It strikes me as just being a lesser version of that, so it's already not off to a bad start. Then they switch us over to Newt, and again, like we've kind of like established early on, these movies were originally about him, but now they should just do a Dumbledore spin-off movie. They should just done a movie called the Harry Potter universe, The Secrets of Dumbledore, you know, or something like that, because Newt Scamander has, I don't know, it feels like they're struggling to make him relevant in this movie, this third movie that should be his story. And so when we meet him, he's like in the middle of like the woods or something. It's super dark. And what runs across my mind at this point in this movie is just how ugly these movies are. They're like, I think you mentioned in our text conversation how everything's like a gray color palette, because in this first scene that we meet Newt, he's like getting attacked like by Credence and the bad guys, like while he's like trying to like do something with it's like an ugly like dinosaur hippopotamus thing, and it becomes a big part of the plot later. So it gives birth to one.
The hippopotamus thing.
The hippopotamus animal becomes a big part of the plot later, and it becomes part of the electoral process later. So it gives birth to this hippopotamus, and then Newt gets attacked. I can't tell what the fuck is going on. I understand that Newt gets knocked out and they take a baby hippopotamus, then kill the mom. But then at the last second, Newt is like, oh, she gave birth to twins, so there's 2 hippopotami now. The one that's taken to Grindelwald, he kills it and then revives it, like reanimates its corpse or something, because he's got plans for it later. And we see a little scene with Queenie, we see a little scene with Credence, and we see that they both have turmoil. They'll scene with them together, and they're like, you know, like, I hear, oh, you're sad, aren't you? Yeah, I'm sad too. Well, okay, we'll deal with that later.
Yeah, because they both left the people that they loved to join Grindelwald.
Newt, his brother, they tried to call Tina, but she wasn't available. No, I'm just kidding. Also, they don't explain her absence. But anyway, so Newt, his brother, Dan Fogler, they all go meet up with Dumbledore, because there's not really anything driving the plot necessarily. It just seems like they just get the movies just like, they just decide when to start and when to stop fighting Grindelwald. Like there's not really like an inciting incident. You know what I mean? There's not really an inciting incident. It's just like, okay, well, I guess it's been long enough since the last movie. I guess we should do something about that. So they just, Dumbledore invites them down, and then we get a very long scene explaining the blood pact that they did, the thing. He's like, if I even think about attacking Grindelwald myself, and then it like, you know, wraps its arm around, it's like the little thing necklace like starts to strangle his arm, and he's like, if I even think about it, and it's like, Albus, are you okay? And he like lets go at the last. He's like, you know, it's like a trope, you know.
Okay.
And just to demonstrate, okay, they really can't fight, you know, otherwise, you know. So then I'm pretty sure after this they go to Berlin, Germany, as if the Nazi analogy wasn't clear enough. They literally go to Berlin, Germany, and then fight. Are they fighting wizard Nazis? Like, they're fighting bad guy wizards in Germany, and they have the Nazi haircuts, but there's no swastikas or anything. And then this is whenever we're introduced to the backdrop of this election that's going on. There's this election to like be the prime minister or the minister of magic for Germany or whatever. And I think that at this meeting that they go to, they're discussing whether or not Grindelwald should be held for trial, or whether or not they should just let his they decide to let his charges just go. Like, they're just like, oh yeah, because I feel like J.K. Rowling doesn't know what to do with this franchise. So she's like, is Grindelwald like an established criminal on the run who's always you know, they're always after him, or is he just slipping away? You know, he's like a white collar criminal. Like, we don't know. So in this movie, they change course and they're like, okay, never mind. We're dropping all his charges. And then I think it's implied that he's got some like corruption going on, because then somebody inside the Ministry of Magic is like, well, we should let him run, I guess, now that he's not part of the, now that he's not a wanted fugitive anymore, we should let him run. He'll lose, obviously he'll lose. But then the people will have their say.
What? Just bizarre that she would have him run for office.
It's funny because she just doesn't like. I thought he was a fugitive, but whatever. So then he's like at a meeting, and Dan Fogler is mad at him. So they all have this very careful plan, but there's this dumb as fuck thing that throughout the movie they're like, the best plan is multiple plans, and we can't all know the plan because then, what if we get compromised? And then so it's just so that way later on they can move, later on in the movie they can have a surprise be pulled out of somebody's ass, and they're like,
yeah,
even you can't know the plan, Newt. It's like, I fucking hate this movie. Okay, go ahead, let's go. So Dan Fogler is given a fake wand, and they go to where Grindelwald is in Germany, and he can't contain himself because he sees Queenie, and she ignores him because she's like, which I thought that the reason she joined Grindelwald was kind of like inadvertently for him.
Grindelwald is like, hey, everybody, come with me if you want to join my regime and kill all the muggles. And Queenie looks to the muggle guy and is like, I love you, come with me. I have to go fight for us. And he's like, no.
He's like, did you hear him?
That's why I thought there must have been some magical aspect to Grindelwald's ability to convince people of shit. It's literally, he's just like, says whatever that person wants, and even though it's the opposite of what he says to everybody else in public,
she's like, sure. So anyways, so she's in this movie, and I just hate it because it seems like, I hate whenever my characters are like, they like trip and then it causes a plot point to happen because a character was dumb or something. So Dan Fogler is so mad because Queenie is there with Grindelwald ignoring him. And so he pulls out his fake wand and like threatens Grindelwald. And then Grindelwald's like, what are you going to do? Like, because I think, like recognizes him. I don't understand. I don't know what actually.
Right, because they've known each other.
Right. So
they met each other in the.
Well, he's like, what are you going to do to me? And then one of the other people who is a wizard that came with him, like, does a little spell to make it look like Dan Fogler was doing something, but really they just made the weather go crazy in that room. So it creates a kerfuffle. So then Newt's brother gets arrested.
Because they did magic in a room?
Because they threatened there, because there was an assassination attempt on Grindelwald. And that was the way it
Who
appeared.
At this moment is a legitimate candidate in a Democratic campaign. Okay.
And but Dan Fogler gets away, but because I guess Theseus or whatever was part of their group, he gets arrested by Grindelwald's people and locked away. Mm-hmm. So then we get this whole subplot of Newt having to go rescue his brother. It just is, pad that fucking plot, man. This whole plot of Newt having to go to this dungeon to get him out, and there's just one guard, and he's like a sleepy guy, and he has the animals have to do like a thing to get the key, and like meanwhile Newt is like off, going, Theseus, where are you? And there's these little crab things, and they're like, they look cute at first, but then you realize that they're bad, and then he's like, oh no, but I'm a zoologist, so I'll do a funny little dance for the kids, so that way they won't kill me. I hate it so much. So that's Newt's plot for a good portion of the movie. And I think this is the part where we get the Credence Dumbledore fight, where they are both like, Dumbledore's just walking around in public, and Credence, who's been having this like back and forth like struggle, like he's sending these messages like, I miss you and I want to come home and stuff, to his dad, who is, I guess, Albus's brother. Like Albus, I guess he is Dumbledore's nephew. Credence is Dumbledore's nephew, which again, you would think based on the relationship, like the chemistry between or what they're going for anyways, like the amount of screen time they have together, you'd think they're son and father, but
I thought they were brothers.
No, they're not. But now because Albus is gay,
he can't have a son or daughter, I guess, but like he can't have a son. He's his brother's son, so he's Albus's nephew, and they barely try and establish a relationship between him and his actual father at all. It's like an afterthought. There's one scene at the end where they're like, "Oh, I miss you. Let's come home," and it's like, who, so they have this fight, and then, like I said, somebody was like, "What is happening?" I don't know what's happening, and I think Albus just humiliates Credence in public. He doesn't turn into a smoke monster. I think they decided that gimmick was a little bit like people didn't like that, the Credence turn into a smoke monster at the end of the first movie, and I think he does this. He
turns into a smoke monster multiple times in the second one.
Yeah,
he doesn't turn into a smoke monster at all.
No, oh, so that's why you're confused. Yeah, he doesn't do it at all. I guess he's honed in his powers a little bit more. He's doing like a lot of like throwing like things that like make like giant like earthquake in a direction kind of thing, like he's got powers of whatever. So but he doesn't turn into a smoke monster. They just completely abandoned that.
I thought the whole reason why Grindelwald wanted him was because the aspect of his childhood, the repression of his magical existence,
well, it makes him powerful, but it doesn't make him a I think it's just because it makes him powerful. I don't think it's because it makes him a smoke monster.
I thought the smoke monster was why Grindelwald needed him. I thought it was like, oh, we need this kid because he can turn into a smoke monster, and the smoke monster is the only thing with enough raw power to kill Dumbledore. But I guess it was just because Credence has a lot of internal magical ability, I guess.
I don't know. So they go to Hogwarts, and this is just so that way they can include Hogwarts in the fucking movie and on the poster. They go to Hogwarts for one scene, so that way Dumbledore can talk to them about what their plan is for the climax of the film. It has nothing to do with Hogwarts, except Dumbledore works there. He's a professor at this time. So they go visit him at work, and of course, whenever you see the establishing shot, you see a little Gryffindor person riding the what do they fucking call it?
Broom.
The broom, thank you. They see the little establishing shot with the Gryffindor person riding the little broom. And they're like, dun, 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 and like little snitch goes, zoom. And I'm like, oh, that's the thing from the movie. Anyways, the worst part of the film is the climax. It's the election now. They have this election in the sky. There's a staircase that leads to the sky. All the three candidates stand there. Gellert is now one of the candidates. I love that I call him Gellert now. We're on a first name basis. Gellert's one of the candidates. And the way they elect is there is a democratic election, I guess by voice, like by applause. Is how
they use the applausometer.
Yes, they literally do it by sound. Can I hear it for Grindelwald? That's not the worst part, because the worst part is, I guess that's just part of it, but the real deciding, like I guess that's like the popular vote, but the electoral college is the hippopotamus. They have the hippopotamus come from the beginning of the first movie. The two hippopotami, dead one reanimated by Grindelwald, one that's Newt's. One is there, and it's both. They plop it down, and like in a movie, whenever a couple breaks up and they share a dog, and they're like, all right, how do we solve this? Well, I'll stand on this side of the room, you stand on that side of the room, and whoever the dog goes to, they can keep the dog. That's who the dog likes more. They do that, but with the electoral process in this movie, they like plop the little pig down, pig hippopotamus, and so they're like, all right, of these three people, whoever you go to gets your endorsement to be the president. And apparently that means a lot, because then that's like each time it happens twice in the film, it is that is who ends up winning the popular vote as well by applause-meter. Thoughts?
What? So J.K. Rowling creates an electoral system for the government of the wizards, and then at the end goes, the president of a given ministry is decided by which candidate an animal goes to?
That's correct. Yeah, they're correct. The animal goes to them, looks at them, sniffs them, and if it likes you, it'll bow in front of you. And then everybody in the audience goes, fuck yeah!
Is it established that the pig hippo thing has like a supernatural ability to
Maybe
tell when somebody is good?
Maybe, because again, at the beginning of the movie, whenever it's like giving the bomb is giving birth, I'm like, where is this going? Is this just like, and then it's like throughout the film, it's like constantly like in his little briefcase, and it's like, and then Gellert has one as well, and there's lots of scenes with him holding it, and it's like, oh, that's cute, and then he stabs it while it's in its, you know, and there's a separate scene that we come back to of him reviving it. So they spend a lot of time with these animals just for this payoff.
What a bizarre governmental system.
So
maybe the commentary is that J.K. Rowling thinks that representative democracy is totally random and pointless.
She's from a monarchy, so Gellert wins, but then somebody
he wins with the necromancer hippo.
Yeah, exactly. But then like there's this whole plot line of like they all, because you have to be unpredictable so that way he can't win or something. Everybody gets a replica suitcase, and they shuffle them around so that way we don't know who has the real suitcase. And at the end we think the Newt has it, and then he doesn't. Then he opens it and it's like, oh shit. And then somebody's like, aha! Don't worry, Newt. Remember, not everybody can know the plan. And then I have the real suitcase. I'm like, what is this for? I don't understand. Like, I get in the plot, they like write it in so that way they like, oh, this way the bad guys won't know who to go after. You know, we'll split up. We'll all have a suitcase, and things like that. And I'm just like, I don't know. It again, pad that fucking runtime. So at the very last second, Newt is like, actually, I have, and then it goes to Dumbledore. The good guy hippopotamus pig goes to Dumbledore, and Dumbledore, of course, because he's good guy, Dumbledore says, no, can't be me, surely there is somebody else. And I shit you not, I think after that it goes to like an Asian woman. So like the woman of color was the second choice for the pig, which is really fucked.
When the hippo goes to Dumbledore, is there anybody that goes like, oh, but you not wanting to be governor is why you should be Governor Dumbledore?
No, I think that's just the subtext.
Okay.
I think that's just, it's like, of course, he will also, because they've written themselves into a corner, because this is the prequel, and I look on the biography on harrypotter.com, and it doesn't say that he was the president of the Ministry of Magic. So they can't let him do it. They asked to turn it down, but also that's just, he's such a fucking good guy, John.
Do they acknowledge how often they have these pig elections?
No, it's got to be every 4 years, right?
I mean, it must be regularly, because the guy in charge of the Ministry of Magic in the Harry Potter movies isn't an Asian woman.
Right. And by the way, real quickly, Gellert says, I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids. Runs away. Credence gives up. I think Credence is like, throughout his storylines kind of merge. He's decided that he no longer wants to kill his father and uncle, and he wants to go home, but I think he's been mortally wounded by this point, so I can't remember if Credence dies or not, or if it's just implied that he is going to die. But I think he's been mortally wounded, which is, thank God they solved their Ezra Miller problem. Am I right? Thank God. They're like, are you going to replace him for Fantastic Beasts 4? They're like, just you wait, we got that all taken care of. So
we're not going to have a Fantastic Beasts 4.
And they kind of wrap it up. They kind of wrap it up in the way where Grindelwald's not defeated. He runs into hiding, but there is like the implication, like they have a conversation where it's like, oh, don't worry, the work continues. Like, we will defeat him. So in that case, if they just want to be like, no, it's a trilogy, that's all. You know, they kind of can. But of course, he's still out there, so they could do it again. And the last scene of the movie is Queenie and Dan Fogler's wedding at the bakery.
Queenie doesn't get in trouble at all at the end?
She just goes back to being a good guy. Why not? There's multiple moments where I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, for instance, I don't know where this is in the plot, but it's revealed that Albus and his brother got into a fight one day, and they accidentally killed their sister. Like, she had a degenerative disease, or the same sort of degenerative ailment, magic or otherwise, that Credence has. So she was like, or something. I think like
Obscura.
I can't remember. I have no idea. She was gonna die like another character is going to die, like maybe Credence. Can't remember? Question mark.
Okay.
And then he describes to Newt a time when him and his brother got in an argument over Gellert. Him and Gellert. he didn't like his relationship with him as I don't think it was a homophobic thing. I think it was something else. And so
Grindelwald is an evil monster.
Yeah,
Maybe don't be in a relationship with him.
Don't date Hitler, you know. So he says he drew his wand, he drew his wand, which was foolish, and then I drew my wand, which was even more foolish. And Dumbledore says, I can't remember whose spell it was that hit her, and then he his lip quivers, and then Newt's like, it's okay. I'm like, is it though? Hang on. These are good guys.
Look, man, wizards get to do whatever they want, and they still get to be morally good as long as they have regret about it.
I have no idea what's going on. None of it makes sense. There were times where I was like, this movie had me feeling like it's so bad it's good kind of thing. This movie's funny, you know? Then I had times where I was so bored where I just like, anytime I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat after this is never a good sign, you know? And I'm like, oh, well, you know, like my brain's trailing off, you know, like, oh, that'd be fun. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to do this. You know, I need to go to the grocery store later. You know, I should be enthralled in the scene. Times when it had me bored. There were times where I was like, okay, this is kind of good. But overall, would not recommend Fantastic Beasts and the Dumbledore. But I did enjoy this conversation with you, John. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a good time.
Always a pleasure. Last question, though. Do you have any money to bail me out?
Okay, buddy. I'm gonna ask you this one more time before your lawyer gets here. Help me help you. Is there anything else you can remember about that night? Anything?
I guess there is one more thing. Finally, if you're gonna defend Chris Rock, at least do it well.
If you watch this show for a while, you may know I'm a bit of a Bill Maher fan. It may be my worst trait, but nonetheless, I was excited to see the HBO host weigh in on the slap heard around the world.
It took me a few days to gather my thoughts on the slap, but this is how I generally feel.
Chris Rock probably didn't know about Jada's alopecia and probably didn't realize he was touching a nerve. But Will Smith should have never hit him, and the Academy definitely should have removed Will immediately after the incident. People heckling comedians, and yes, in some cases attacking them, happens far too often already. And I hate the idea that someone might try it at a comedy club because they saw Will Smith get away with it.
So what was Bill's take? Well, he starts off strong,
calling his segment Explaining Jokes to Idiots and pointing out correctly that Will Smith was laughing at the joke until Jada shot him a look. He compares this to some stick-in-the-mud audience member at a comedy show, yelling, "That's not funny," while everyone else laughs.
He's right on track here, and I'm not just saying that because he agrees with me. But here's where Bill takes the turn. He highlights these very real issues and says there's somehow proof that cancel culture is real?
Kevin Hart, Gilbert Gottfried, Kathy Griffin, Dave Chappelle, Sarah Silverman, and Roseanne Barr are his listed victims. But if that's what being canceled looks like, just tell me where to sign up. Roseanne's cancellation was her own damn fault, but Kevin Hart has 3 movies in active development. Sarah Silverman is still actively touring. Dave Chappelle's whole point was that he can't be canceled. Kathy Griffin has been the subject of 2 documentaries and was in a TV show just this year.
And Gilbert Gottfried is, well, dead, but I'm pretty sure that's just a coincidence. Because Bill, babe, if cancel culture is real,
how the hell is this woman still employed? I know she isn't a comedian, but J.K. Rowling has gone out of her way to denigrate trans people on public forums over and over again. Yet she still has been a screenwriter on all 3 of the Fantastic Beasts movies. Why isn't the woke mob so powerful when it comes to her?
It's because you're fighting a made-up boogeyman, Bill. And the irony is, you'd be a lot funnier if you just stopped complaining. Okay, that's our show! I'd like to thank Alex McKellar, John Lein, and Eduardo Saucedo. I'll see you next week, folks.
Hey, what do you want me to do? I'm not getting anywhere with him. Yeah, I can bring him to the station. I'm gonna have to let you go. Hey!